Hey Singers, it's Dan Leach, and I have a wonderful guest for you today. It is the founder and CEO of Reviva Pharma, Dr. Bott. So great to be with you today, Doctor.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
The pleasure and honor is all mine. Well, listen, schizophrenia has been around for more than a century and is one of those diseases that we know is proven difficult to treat. Reviva Pharmaceuticals thinks it can change that by targeting the serotonin dopamine receptors. Can you tell us about the science behind that and how it's translating into drug development?
Sure. The schizophrenia is a very serious mental illness, and globally around 24 million people suffer from schizophrenia. US alone, close to 4 million. The schizophrenia differentiates from other diseases because it's not a life-threatening disease, but patients are different in the sense if they are burdened to themselves, family, and then society. Often the schizophrenia starts early teenage, and then they have rest of their life to, another 4 to 5 decades to live. And then medications require lifelong. So having said that, so a medication, it's not just a week-long treatment. The drug has to be taken most patients lifelong. It has to be efficacious. Expected efficacy is durable and safe enough to take lifelong. Now, having said that, there are 14 drugs got approved in the last 40 years. And still, if you look at the numbers, around 1/3 of the 24 million people do not respond to the currently available treatment, either fully or partially respond. So this is a huge unmet need, and schizophrenia market alone around $12 billion market. And then schizophrenia often associated with very closely related other mental illness. So antipsychotics, we call it, the treatment for schizophrenia. That's the widely standard pharmacotherapy. The antipsychotics market is close to $40 billion because often is relatively well-tolerated antipsychotics are used beyond schizophrenia. So we believe our drug fall in that category. Now you mentioned about dopamine and serotonin. Schizophrenia is primarily caused by dysfunctional neurotransmitter called dopamine serotonin in the brain. So dysfunctional dopamine serotonin also causes dysfunction in other neurotransmitters we call they are downstream target. Now, having said that, a typical pharmacology developing a new treatment, we need to identify the right target for the drug. So here, dopamine, serotonin, they are the primary imbalance causing schizophrenia, is the primary targets. Our drug targets the primary target, dopamine, serotonin system. So that's the key difference. And then so far, the data generated today is very well differentiated. We believe our drug, not only with respect to efficacy, safety, and then tolerability that translate into treatment adherence in all respect, it's differentiated. Happy to elaborate.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, Doctor. We can. The lead drug candidate, Brilaroxazine, and it appears to be a pipeline and a product. Can you tell us about the rationale for different indications that you intend to pursue and their development status?
Yeah, when we say pipeline in a product, antipsychotics is unique with respect to not all drugs cannot be, we can develop for multiple indications. So schizophrenia, a mental illness, it is a dysfunction caused by dysfunctional serotonin and dopamine neurochemicals. So when we say this dopamine, serotonin neurochemicals, say the closely related indication, for example, I'll pick 3 indications: schizophrenia, bipolar, and major depressive disorder. All 3 indications are caused by dysfunctional dopamine serotonin. Now, having said that, The dysfunction in schizophrenia is slightly different than dysfunction, the level of dysfunction in bipolar, and then it is slightly different in major depressive disorder. An antipsychotic drug that has a good safety profile is also approved for beyond schizophrenia to bipolar and major depressive disorder at a different dose level. So if you look at a spectrum, you can say that a high dopamine dysfunction may fall in somewhere acute schizophrenia patients. They are hospitalized patients. And then other end, more serotonergic dysfunction translate into depression. That does not mean that depression patients do not have dysfunctional dopamine. Then also, that does not mean that schizophrenia patients do not have dysfunctional serotonin. So they have dysfunctional both dopamine and serotonin at a different level. So a drug that targets dopamine serotonin receptors with a good safety profile can go beyond schizophrenia. That is with our drug, brilaroxazine. That's why it is called a pipeline in a drug. So we intend to develop based on the available or data generated to date. We believe we can really develop this drug beyond schizophrenia to bipolar. That is around an $8 billion market currently, and then major depressive disorder, that is much larger market, around a $15 billion market. So overall, we believe drug has the potential to go beyond schizophrenia, even though the data generated to date from multiple trials for schizophrenia, there is enough evidence to to make a reasonable judgment that drug can be developed beyond schizophrenia.
Speaking of, needing money to get this stuff going, in June, I know Reviva launched a $10 million public stock offering. How much was the company able to raise, Dr. Bott, and what are the proceeds being used for?
So since we are waiting for FDA meeting outcome, the 10 million by and large will go to wrapping up our remaining portion of the open label study, and then also G&A expense to paying off salaries and routine expenses. So the major clinical expense will come up based on if you go with an additional indication, or we intend to develop this drug for bipolar or negative symptoms separately. So at this time, the 10 million is used mainly G&A expense and paying off, wrapping up the leftover or wrapping up the remaining part of the open label study.
Sure. And I know, as we talked about, schizophrenia obviously is a big market for Reviva, but it's not the only one, Dr. Bott. What other areas of brain disorders can brilaroxazine potentially treat? And what is the market opportunity for Reviva in that?
So one uniqueness of our drug is the ability of drug to treat neuroinflammation. So what we know so far, at the beginning I mentioned, even though there are drugs available to treat schizophrenia, still, patients get relapse on treatment, at least based on the randomized trial. In clinical trial, in the long-term treatment, historical data, what we learn is around 20 to 25% patients get relapse on treatment. That means the efficacy, what we see with the currently available treatment in 4 to 6 weeks of treatment, and then that's the primary endpoint, drug got approved to market. But the durability of this efficacy is not holding up in many patients. That's what they get relapse. So partly what we know so far, besides this relapse, around 1/3 patients, they partly respond or do not respond to the treatment. So current clinical literature pointing to if a drug can address the systemic inflammation. So what we know, every single schizophrenia patient, depression patient, bipolar patient, they have at a varying degrees of the neuroinflammation. If a drug can address neuroinflammation, it can have a far-reaching implication on the efficacy, enhanced efficacy, and then possibly sustained durable efficacy. And then also it can address some of the endocrine metabolic side effects, what we see with the treatment or drug-induced side effect. To my knowledge, our drug from two large trials, in first trial in 400 patients, 4 weeks treatment, second trial in another 400 patients over 1 year, showed statistically significant decrease in pro-inflammatory biomarkers. That is an indication that drug has an anti-inflammatory effect. That is very encouraging. We believe the enhanced or the robust efficacy, durable efficacy, what we have seen with our drug, is partly contributed by anti-inflammatory effect property what our drug has. That is the key differentiating factor, not only going for schizophrenia, beyond schizophrenia to multiple indications, what I highlighted, bipolar, major depressive disorder, and beyond other mental illnesses.
I know there's been, Dr. Bhatt, a lot of recent mega acquisitions in the schizophrenia space, such as Karuna by BMS, Intercellular by J&J, Cerebral by AbbVie, and it's generating a lot of interest and excitement among the investment communities. Can investors expect similar outcomes for Reviva in the near future?
So, yes, mega acquisition. There are different ways to read that mega acquisition. First of all, mega acquisition, good thing is that shows that this is a large market and then big unmet need. There is no doubt and no dispute in that. Now, the mega acquisition often for a new drug, especially a new mechanism, what we call it, there is an expectation that it can treat everything and anything. So unless it is proven, we all have entitled to have our own thoughts and then expectation. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this may fall in that category. Again, the real data, if you look at least being this professional in this field, I don't see that can be that magnitude. It can be replace the current treatment to a great extent. Historically, if you remember the blockbuster drug, you call it over $1 billion sales. If a drug captured less than around 2 to 3% of the market, drug became blockbuster drug over $1 billion sales. So in 2024, the antipsychotic called cariprazine, this is it captured around 5% of the market. Current market share is, to my knowledge, it's around 2.5 billion, 5% market capturing. So now the new mechanism, muscarinic, I believe, based on the publicly available information. So it could capture significant market size and then also can have an add-on therapy to further enhance the capturing market. What's that mean, add-on therapy, those who are not very familiar with that? So schizophrenia with the existing treatment, often physicians treat with the adding more than one antipsychotics, 2 antipsychotics, or one antipsychotic, one antidepressant drug to treat because efficacy is suboptimal in many patients. So add-on therapy may have an added advantage. So the Cobenfy add-on therapy trial did not work that early this year. The data readout did not reach the primary endpoint. So I believe even though it's a mega acquisition, still there is a huge unmet need. There is a differentiated product regardless of the mechanism. At the end of the day, it delivers the efficacy with a clean safety profile. It doesn't matter which mechanism. What we call it in the old sayings, proof is in the pudding, not in the saying. So we believe we have a good pudding. This has the good safety and then efficacy and good treatment adherence. So I believe physicians and will notice that, and then when it comes to market, and then patients will benefit out of it.
Nothing like some tasty pudding, that's for sure. Dr. Bott, the founder and CEO of Reviva Pharma, doing some incredible stuff. That was an absolutely fascinating conversation. I want to thank you so much for your time and for joining me today.
Thank you.